Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? Welcome to Small Talk Sucks. DannyBoyStyles. Got my boy Seeno here.
Hello, hello.
Dan's probably gonna chime in with a 1-2 for us if he can.
Yes, we'll have our boy in the flesh very shortly. So
That's right.
Very excited.
Super
for
Dan.
That. Yes, I'm excited to kick that off. It's going to be interesting to have him here and not on the other side of the world talking to him at 1:30 in the morning his time. You know?
Yeah, what you all don't know, Dan's like in a whole other country, and we've had to Photoshop him into episodes.
Yeah, basically at this point.
Pretty much.
I mean,
but he'll be back with us. He'll be back with us soon.
Yeah, we're going to have him in the flesh with us for a good extended period, so it'll allow for some good, invigorating conversation. And one of the things I want to lead off with today is society's in the most hyperinflated state of ADD-driven stuff that we have ever been in the history of mankind. Everything from content to consumerism is in a ridiculous fast-paced pace of indulgence. Like Apple, we all are familiar with the annual upgrade cycle.
Yeah.
You know, we're now starting to see the effects and ramifications of this. You have companies like Apple, which are a $3 trillion company, the largest market cap in the world, right?
Wow.
$3.5 trillion.
$3.5 trillion.
And you had the Nvidia spike up a couple months ago, just based off of bull trajectory, and they overtook it for a minute, but only a few short weeks, and Apple reclaimed the throne. But even a company like Apple, that has the world's largest market cap, unlimited R&D budget to develop whatever it is that they want, they can't keep up with their product cycles anymore.
You got to have ideas.
They announce something like Apple Intelligence. They launch the new phone and then tell people that those features aren't even available for months on end. So Apple recently announced that, actually yesterday they announced that they're now moving away from that product cycle and launch cycle of the annual year-over-year upgrade.
Wow.
And basically they're just going to start releasing the products when they're ready. So the year-over-year growth of where you buy a MacBook and then 6 months later you're like, wait a second, my shit's now outdated because there's a chip that goes 6% faster. Like, does it even make a difference?
No.
And probably one of the biggest conscious breakthroughs of development for a corporation to take on in a very long time, because who wants to keep up with it anymore? Who wants to, like, at this point we've reached the point where what's the difference between iPhone 15 and 16 really?
Well, you got to question how they got this far.
Yeah.
You know, I look at, just a question for you as my boy. Like, we live in a day and age where the hype can outsell the technology.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Very much so.
So there was a time where the iPhone was like just like a cool phone. And then I think with the scale of like what is the social media applications and things like that, it gave yourself different type of usability for your product. Yeah. So now the influx and purchase for it is coming from the hype of the what would he say? The celebrities, walking around with the iPhone. It's not even when they had even when the goggles came out, like the whole thing was like, it's like who was the coolest person to have those Vision Pros? Who was walking around? Yeah. But does the technology like follow the hype for you? Like, does it when you, because you're more of a technical person, you're the type of person who gets a product and you do the ins and outs and check it like you.
I'm a Gen 1 purchaser for sure.
I get my products because Seeno tells me. He's like, bro, you got to get this.
Yeah.
So from you as a user, do you see the technology sitting in the space where the hype is?
Great question. I think sometimes the technology is just when it's the pioneering of a new industry or class of product, like touching on the Vision Pro. Q1 sales across the board for all virtual reality goggles were down 60% in Q1 2024. Meta, Sony, Apple, the three big players in the space with the Oculus, with the Meta Quest, with the Vision Pro.
Even making it at a good price point, by the way.
Meta does that very well.
Yeah,
like they
great
have a
price
very
point
consumer-friendly price, but that's because they're on their fifth or sixth iteration of the product now.
Wow.
Apple, the technology is so far superior from what Apple delivered for the Vision Pro. And the interesting thing was that for Q2, Apple sales were up for the Vision Pro. which was shocking. They moved 110,000 units. All of the analyst reports were that it was never going to crack 100,000
of course I didn't believe either,
in a quarter again. And what that shows you is that people are ready for technological upgrades and innovations, but they want proof of product. They want to make sure that it works. So when I was introduced to something like the Vision Pro, I thought it was incredibly groundbreaking. Parts of me were disappointed because once again, it felt like it was taken out of the oven a little too soon and put on the table, you know?
Yeah.
Like it didn't seem like... Now with Vision OS 2, which is all the software upgrades of the Vision Pro, it feels like it's the first iteration of it.
Did they change the price point? Is it still the same?
No, it's the same exact price still.
Same exact
price?
Now,
the reason being is that Apple wasn't targeting everyday consumers with that product, right? They were targeting people like me, people who want tech-savvy individuals who want to pay to preview future technology.
Correct.
That's what you're paying the big ticket.
Because that's why I got it too also.
Yeah, you got to preview
Let me give it a test
is,
drive
right?
and see what you guys have going on.
But when you haven't worked out the kinks and you have something that feels so unfamiliar as a technology, like it's not the basis of how you're used to scrolling and you're now doing some Minority Report style shit and controlling it with your eyes, you know? It's like, how do I even get around this thing? How do I work it?
$4,000.
You know? And it's $4,000, right? So to justify the cost basis of implementing something like that into your everyday life, like it definitely needs to be up to par. And with certain items, I feel like they meet the hype with the innovation aspect, but the iPhone lost its luster for me and many people a long time ago. So statistics would tell you that they're not targeting the year-over-year upgrade anymore. Like they're targeting the person who's going from the iPhone 12 or 13 to the 16. You understand?
They're targeting cameras, by the way.
Exactly. Well, that's where most of the innovation lies, or most of the advertised innovation lies, is that we're pushing a product that now has more megapixels. It's a stronger resolution. You can zoom farther and whatnot.
People's everyday use.
But I feel like that has to come to an end, because in order for a company like Apple or other major corporations to hold on to that chokehold of the industry that they have, I would rather wait an extra 6-7 months to get the product that's ready to be delivered to make it a worthy upgrade, you know?
But they've got us with the FOMO.
Yeah, you do have the FOMO.
You get the FOMO when they first try to put it out.
My wife recently just celebrated her birthday, and I got her an iPhone 16 upgrade because she's one of those that she's heavy on the camera. She has like fucking 150,000 photos and videos in her camera roll. Takes up a majority of my family cloud space, you know what I mean? Which is its own conversation. But the question that I ask myself is like, when you have to hold your old phone up against your new phone and be like, yeah, I see the difference. Like almost convince yourself of it.
Yeah, you have to force yourself into it.
We've reached a day and age where the innovation isn't coming fast enough. So I think we've kind of been put into a little bit of a perspective of being spoiled in the sense of what technology we hold in the palm of our hands.
I mean, that's true. I 100% support that. We are freaking spoiled.
100%, because you have godlike power in the palm of your hand to be able to, especially with AI implementation now. You know, like you literally, I was showing my father-in-law the other day, like I was having a conversation in Farsi into ChatGPT that it was then translating back to perfect English. And then when I was saying something in English, it was translating it back to perfect Farsi.
Wow.
Even like the little slang terms that like you would only know coming up in the culture.
You know how innovative that is? That's crazy.
Yeah, like live on the fly translation. So that's my whole point. The technology matches the hype when they allow for it, when they give it the leeway or the time, or when it arrives in the form that it was meant to be delivered to your doorstep with initially.
Yeah,
you know?
When they have the great stuff in there also, if you're like savvy enough to utilize the technology for your day-to-day, you're going to.
Yeah, and like how many people are actually like me who give a shit enough to take the time to learn how to implement it into their day-to-day life.
Not many, bro. Everyday people are not trying to do that. They're like, they might care. They're going to take their pictures and upload it and save it.
Absolutely. And it goes back to my initial initiation of the conversation where we're just in such a hyper-inflated state of ADHD as a society where like people are constantly looking to jump to the next best thing. Like what we understood coming up, and you know, this is an outlier because there's always the innovators and the hustlers of the generations who always do things understanding that it's not an overnight. It's the 10-year overnight success flow that people understand. And real entrepreneurs get that mentality. But we're in the day and age where if you launch something and it's not a smash or it doesn't go viral within like the first couple of weeks, people question like, your success.
They're like, is this really good?
Yeah. Like, is this really something that is tangible or something that I should follow or get behind, because it's not doing the numbers that you've been conditioned to think equate success, right?
Yeah, because they're spoiled.
Yeah, but how many TikTok should be the prime example of during that 2018 to 2022 era, a couple artists that we've worked with ourselves. Like that is now the definition of what is essentially the one-hit wonders of our generation.
Yeah,
right?
The TikToks. Yeah.
Like back in the day, it was you made the radio with one song, people sang it for a summer and then forgot
that
about
was
you.
It, and they called you like, yo, you're the one-hit wonder.
And then never heard from you again.
Yeah,
right?
Now you're on TikTok. You get they don't even know your song. It's like a 16-second move and a couple dances.
They know the song. They don't know you.
They don't know.
They don't know who the artist is.
They don't know who
the
artist is.
Like we've worked with some artists who have had billions of views, hundreds of millions of streams. That
no one knows who they are.
No one knows who they are.
They know the song.
Yeah.
Well, they're selling the song more than they're selling the artist these days. That's why.
Yeah.
You know, they're not putting the artist well, I mean, the artist is not putting themselves in a position to be able to sell themselves. But also, it's like, if you put a product online and people run with it, like, that's just the space you're in. You know?
Yeah, but people immediately, as soon as they get the product, they're looking for the next innovation of it.
Yeah.
You know, where's 2.0? Where's 3.0? Like the craziest shit these days. No, the craziest shit these days is that, like, even in accordance with the iPhone, there's before the iPhone 16 comes out, there's spec leaks for the iPhone 17.
Damn.
Like, where the fuck are we at? Like, imagine if you correlate that back to film or any other aspect of art.
You couldn't.
I'm watching a preview in cinema for Avatar 3. And as I leave the theater, I'm getting snippets of Avatar 4.
Oh my God.
You know?
Makes no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense. It takes away from the delicate nature of the art.
Also, it makes you question why buy the product if you're already promoting something else that's going to come out with it or supposedly be stronger, and you need it actually essentially requires a new hardware to even function it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Apple's done good with the updates and things like that, because up to now, like, I've been able to utilize everything outside of the AI. What is not that, I guess now they're not implementing, or are they?
They are. It's just not going to arrive for another couple months. Which is going to be in a software-based update. But that's a soft sell in itself, because our iPhones are going to work perfectly for it. So the iPhone 16 was advertised as being the first phone that's actually built for the AI like processing.
Right.
But for what? For Siri to break down a couple extra questions for you that like you're already doing on a ChatGPT app on your phone that offloads 90% of the processing anyway to their database and servers, and like it doesn't make any sense. So we had this conversation on our last episode where we asked, do we think that we're going to reach that point where it starts to teeter back the other way? And I did not think that answer was going to arrive within the next week. You know, of they're beginning to peel it back themselves.
They are. They're going to have to, because they don't have the sales to cover it.
No, and like Apple has moved into the services. You know, that's now a big part of their bottom line. Yeah. Like iCloud, Apple One, Apple TV, Health, all these other services that they're doing, and like iCloud, huge part of their revenue basis. And like they obviously have the foresight and data that we don't, right?
Of course.
It's
like they've been collecting it for years.
The way to correlate it back to even something in our industry, the most important aspect and data of our industry we don't have. So like the distributors and the mafia does, right? It's like, what are the skip rates? What are the playlist skip rates? What are the ad rates? All those things.
You got to be inside to get that.
That none of the artists themselves are going to have for now. Yeah. We'll get to that at another time. But that's a product offering that's coming in the future, right? But essentially, it brings you back to this basis of, I think people are just fucking over it, to be quite frank with you. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, bro, who can do it anymore?
I don't think that the iPhone has anything else
to offer outside of what it's been offering so far.
Yeah.
I do believe that. I mean, I love Apple. I'm in the music industry, so it's like everyone has an Apple computer or whatnot when it comes to production and things like that. So I've been using Apple for the past 2 decades.
Yeah, unless you're an FL Studio producer.
Unless you're an FL Studio, but even then they have a Mac version.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but like as far as the advancement of it, like the only reason I have an iPhone is because I have a MacBook Pro.
Yeah, the ecosystem that you're locked into. You know,
I would prefer to have a Samsung because in my honest opinion, it's a better hardware. When it comes to the type of phone it is, it's a better hardware.
It's open source.
It's open source. That's also an issue too, though.
Yeah.
That's
for
also
security and all that
and things
stuff.
like that. But there's programs and things like that you can purchase now, and it'll take care of that. Yeah. But what I'm saying is essentially, if there was never this thing that came with my MacBook and my phone, which then did lead me to get the goggles because it felt like easy transition. All my contacts, all my everything, nothing changed. Everything was still the same usability, but it just didn't expand for me, bro. It didn't
and there was a couple things that I thought that they left out that was very questionable. Like FaceTime is one of Apple's biggest features. Like the fact that I had to take my goggles off to unlock my iPhone and it didn't recognize something like how if you have an Apple Watch on, like the Apple Watch acts as an unlock for the iPhone. So like you don't have to swipe up to do that. It'll
so
just
that's not
unlock.
on the goggles. You have to go to your phone and open it up?
Take your goggles off to do it, right? So
Guys,
it's just
I need you to come on.
It's like an extra clusterfuck of a situation that is completely unnecessary. And now with Vision OS 2, you can actually mirror your phone to your Vision Pros. So like while you're in the goggles, you could pull the phone up and then like actually control it and utilize it that way.
Well, that's a
to
standpoint
do it, right?
of like.
And the other crazy omission that they left out was the fact that you can't take calls, regular calls on it. You could take FaceTime calls with the spatial personas, which is actually far beyond what people give it credit for because they rapidly improve like the digital personas.
Wow.
And when I'm having a FaceTime with the one other friend in the world that has a Vision Pro, like it's actually really dope, you know? Because it's like you're sitting in the room.
It's amazing right there.
And it's actually like you're sitting in the room, and if we're both looking at the same screen that I'm sharing, and like I point to something on like the right side of it, you'll see it from the same perspective as
it's
I'm
also
sharing
new training, bro.
You know?
It's also new training. You can't fault them for preparing for the future.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? And trying to get their consumers prepared for their future so they can utilize the products when they come out.
Yeah.
It's like training, but like, you know,
like have you seen the recent
bro?
Meta announcement that everybody got hyped on, which was the Orion glasses? Like Meta announced last week at their annual developer conference or their annual conference, whatever it is, with Mark Zuckerberg wearing a 3 sizes too large shirt with Greek Latin writing on it. Which,
shout out to that,
which is cool. I respect the rebrand,
culture influence,
you know? But they announced this new product called the Orion glasses, and everybody got really, really hyped on them because everybody was saying, oh, this is the Vision Pro killer. This is what it should have been. They're basically styled glasses like yours. Like they're like Ray-Ban style glasses that have all the technology of the Vision Pro in them. So you can do everything with the eye movement and all that stuff. The part that people left out is that each one of those prototypes, it's not actually in development, each one of those prototypes costs $10,000 a pop right now, and the earliest in which they would come to market is 2027.
Damn.
So Apple released the consumer-ready product in 2024. So by the time that cycle comes around of where the competition is actually catching up,
they would have already.
Apple's already going to have perfected it, right?
Yeah.
And the long-term vision for what they read, I had this crazy Vanity Fair article that I recommended to people when it first came out of Tim Cook talking about the innovation of the Vision Pro and them talking about how do you feel being the company that made everybody so connected but disconnected at the same time with the iPhone, right? And like he had some interesting politically correct answers that he stated for it. But one of the things that they talked about that was a future long-term goal was basically Apple wants to perfect the technology so much within the next 10 years that it's essentially lenses or like contact-based lenses that you
just
wear.
Stick it in your eye, you just walk
and then
around,
it offloads the processing to what would be the iPhone like 25 at that point, right? To run everything that you need. need, but the visual component and aspect would be
Wow. So you're just like walking around with a phone,
Yeah.
but you just have like these.
But you have like these,
That's dope.
like these goggles on, like
can't
these
wait.
contact lenses on, or these whatever
amazing.
would be like simple thin glasses that do everything that the Vision Pro
Wow.
does now, but tenfold.
They have
where we
no
can't even see
idea
it
they're
going,
watching
right?
porn.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's where Apple really shined with the Vision Pro, was in aspects of entertainment. Like watching a
Right.
movie on the Vision Pro was the only thing that I
Oh
thought
my
that
God,
actually
bro.
replaced the real life aspect.
That was
of it.
amazing.
Like
I cannot not debate that.
Yeah.
When I watched that movie on that thing, I was like, shit. I
It was
feel like I'm in
insane.
the theater. I feel like I'm in the theater.
And where I
Yeah.
use mine the most, like that kind of collects dust on my desk right
That's
now.
all
But
right.
where I use it the most is when I travel. Like when I'm on a plane, right?
Right.
It completely reinvented the travel base.
Of course, because then you're not on the plane anymore.
You're not on the plane anymore. You're sitting
Yeah.
in Bora Bora watching Avatar on the plane while your flight attendant comes over and asks you for a refill of your tequila.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
crazy.
mean?
So every seat is first class at that point.
Exactly.
That's dope.
Which is actually really interesting you say that, because
dope.
you know that's once you travel business class, you're screwed. You screw yourself,
Yeah.
because then you
Tell
just
me
become
about
so
it.
used to the
Oh my
accommodations,
God.
the extra
JetBlue's
legroom.
killing me with this.
Yeah, you'd rather
mid-
take the trip on business than actually worry about the
The
destination that you're
claustrophobia
getting
gets
to.
to you and you
Yeah.
travel a lot. It gets
Yeah.
to you, so you need the space.
And what that did to switch up the basis of comfort
Yeah.
in terms of travel is absolutely night and day,
Yeah.
bro.
It made everything easier.
Yeah, and for the first couple flights, you know, even Dan and I touched on this on an episode. The first couple flights, everybody was looking at me like I was a weirdo. There was kids that were literally turning around in their seat and just staring at me, like wondering what is this guy wearing, right? And Dan presented the question of, I wonder if we're going to arrive at that day and age where you're the weirdo if you don't have one on.
Of course you are. Of course you are. Definitely.
Black Mirror
Yeah,
episode,
yeah. It happens
you know?
every time. It happens every time.
Yeah.
Do you think this technology makes it easier? Just kind of cross-referencing into the entertainment industry. Do you feel like it makes it easier? I mean, just for content creators and
100%.
stuff.
100%.
But does it help to oversaturate it too at the same
No,
time?
but here's the thing, though.
You know?
It wasn't when it first came out 8 months ago.
Right.
One of the main things that people were intrigued by with the Vision Pros was the wraparound screen. So you can share your Mac screen just by looking at your Mac. So if you look at your Mac, it says share to Vision Pro above it. You just click it with your fingers. It comes into your goggles. And when it first came out, it was just one screen that
Yeah.
didn't even match the resolution of your 4K
I remember.
Mac
I
screen.
remember.
It was
Yeah.
a lesser, lower scaled resolution. But
Yeah.
now what they've introduced is a wraparound 180 screen.
Wow.
Which is definitely,
Wow.
essentially 3 different 5K Mac screens wrapped around you.
That's
so
crazy.
for people who do editing, and
Yeah.
they have a pass-through feature now where the goggles recognize that you're holding a laptop. I'm sorry, you're holding a keyboard, and it'll pass through the keyboard, so you could actually see it.
So what is the screen is obsolete soon?
100%.
What is the computer monitor? I
100%?
guess that's
Why
obsolete.
are you
That's
going to
it.
go with a product that's stationary and can't be moved and can't be scaled and
Right.
has to stay plugged into a
And
wall?
now you can have 5 different.
And now
6
you
of
could
them.
have 5
Yeah,
different
whichever
setups
size you want.
with 5K resolution, which your eye's not even going to be able to decipher anything beyond
Right.
that, right?
Yeah.
And you could have, let's say you're editing a movie and you're
Yeah.
editing a video or you're
Yeah.
editing content or whatever it is.
This
you now
side,
have
that
the
side.
whole thing right here.
Yeah.
It's definitely a step forward in innovation.
I did use it in the. I utilized it from the I was using Pro Tools, and that's dope. Like how you can like now for those who into production, like I can put up the mix screen on one side
Yep.
and what is the edit screen on the other, and I can work those two. And I just only need my keyboard. I don't really need the physical up top. It's
And
not
like the
easy.
thing
Yeah.
with that though is that taking us into like some sort of dark dystopian future where like,
No, it's moving us faster.
is it?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, of course, like I had that moment when I was in the studio using it. Of course, I put it on. Like everyone else is there. Like I'm on these big ass goggles.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to edit this record, and then I take it off. I look behind me, and it's like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you,
Yeah.
you need to stay in the room with us.
Yeah.
You know. So I do feel like it did make my job like super fast and definitely more comfortable. But I guess like within using it within the constraints of like being creative and like.
Yeah.
Like kind of touches bases with everyone back and forth.
Yeah.
Wasn't really there. But there will be a point in time where everybody will have something optical
Yeah.
on within the
So
room.
does that take us into some type of disconnected dystopian future where
course.
we're all looking at we're all looking at it through the lenses of some augmented style
Oh,
reality.
they're making it. They're
you know?
making it so we don't even have to be in a room together anymore.
Yeah.
They're separating the whole thing.
But what statistics will now tell you is that searches for I feel lonely, how to make friends, where to meet people are
Wow.
up 350% in the last 2.5 years. So if you look up the data for how these search
Lonely.
trends are trending now,
so
they're spiking, you know? Why? Because we're in such a disconnected world, and these younger Gen Alphas, right?
Yeah.
Like the younger
And
Gen
it's been
Z,
10 years,
Gen
so they're not
Alphas.
that age anymore.
No.
Now they're like,
But they
yeah.
were introduced to it in the peak of their social cycle of where they're supposed to be out and they're supposed to be communicating.
Big social.
And what did we do as kids? Like we used to play outside till the sun went down, and your parents would scream at the top of their lungs, hoping you'd still be on the block.
The street lights come on. Bring your fucking ass inside.
You go home.
I think what's worse is that they're not even there. There's no. They've lost the connection between what is human interaction.
Yeah.
You know. So of course they're looking up things like that because they're not only are they lonely, but they haven't really gotten the tools of what they needed to even have a social conversation or a social construct with it doesn't even matter the gender, just having a basic conversation with somebody that you meet. They don't even have it anymore, bro. It's out the freaking door.
No. And the younger generation, I commend them for a lot of things because they don't stand for corporate bullshit, which I really admire.
Well, they get more information.
They
than
get
we
more
did,
information.
Okay? Yeah.
Okay. They demand more information.
They demand more information because
and they
it's
don't
out there.
stand
That's
behind
smart.
something that they don't believe in, right?
Right.
But with that, the correlation to that is that the younger generation is also extremely sensitive. So
Yeah,
like,
because they're connected visually now.
yeah, and certain
this is
hard
images in them all the
conversations that you
time.
were supposed to have or able to have,
Yeah.
you can't really have anymore. And it's one of those things where like they constantly need the reinforcement of love.
Yeah, they need
right?
constant validation.
Constant
All day-
validation.
all day
That's the
long.
words I was
Constant
looking
validation.
for. You know, they need constant validation.
Yeah.
And like,
It's pretty
I'm a
fucking
big
sad.
believer in tough love. Like,
Yeah,
I
well-
think it's how you shape
That's also a generation thing, though, bro.
strong-minded
That's a
person. Of course
it's a
it is.
different type of
course it is.
generation,
Of
bro.
course it is.
You can't even, bro. You can't even raise your voice at these kids these days,
No.
bro. They'll run for the hills. You know?
They'll run for the hills.
Yep.
Now, with that, there's a lot of conscious progression in a lot of ways because
Right.
the basis of a constructive conversation doesn't need to be at a loud decibel. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, of course
But at
not.
the
Of course
same
not.
time,
Yeah.
you cannot coddle the fuck out of someone whose plasticity of their mind still hasn't even continued
They're all
to
coddled.
expand.
They're all coddled.
You
The
know?
technology has coddled them.
Yeah.
The technology has coddled them.
Yeah.
They're more comfortable typing than talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Nailed it
they're
on
like,
the
I'll
head.
just write it, but if I see it, I just won't say it, but I'll write it.
Yeah.
You know? Well, makes them smarter.
Yeah. In some ways.
In some ways,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't drop them off in the middle of the desert. They'd
No.
probably all die.
Yeah,
but
for
I
sure.
mean,
I mean, they can't DoorDash a water bottle
No,
in
you-
the Sahara. You know what I mean? So it's like
they're gonna figure it out.
they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna have to, you know. But this is also the same generation that would understand like
man.
the DIY approach of like how to build a water well in
Correct.
the middle of the desert. You know, so
Yeah.
it's a very interesting state of time
That's
that
true.
we're in, and like again, the hyper-driven ADHD based society that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Like, to bring it back to our industry where people can relate to, like these artists aren't willing to let things take hold anymore because
No,
they're
they don't wanna give it
constantly
time.
chasing the dopamine hit. Like they constantly want that
That's
spark or moment of
crazy.
virality.
You're right.
You know,
It's not in the music anymore. It's
No.
in the feeling. It's all like gambling. It's like
it's
freaking
like gambling.
Yeah.
The greatest marketing company that I've worked with in recent times,
Yeah.
shameless plug here, is hands down Rising Tides.
Right.
What they do with understanding the day over day build of recruiting one real fan at a time with
Right.
a deliverance of message, right? Like a universal theme that they can actually apply to different people. Like I've seen them blow up so many different variations of artists that
Yeah.
it shows you that the philosophy of what they do is bulletproof.
That's right.
Because
No, you're right.
most of their artists that they've pushed don't fit the ideal poster child image of like, oh, you think they have to be overly good looking or this or that or whatever. It's the polar
Right.
opposite. They
Yeah.
just find the like-minded audience in the pond of 8 billion people, right?
Which is
And it's-
difficult in itself.
And it's off of old school philosophy and principle, but caught up in a hyper state of society today. Like they know how to implement those tactics with a wide reaching scale of the internet in order to make that translate and occur, how to actually scale these artists. And it's these other artists are so focused on chasing virality that they lose sight of actually connecting the message. What value do you add?
It's like when they leave. It's like when they leave this. It's like when they leave the studio, or when they're in there. They're focusing on something that they're like, oh no, this part is going to go viral. This is going to be the moment. This right here, I'm going to really push this and push that, instead of really having the full focus on the song. So what happens is you end up going out there having a preconceived notion that this thing is going to be what it's supposed to be, and when it doesn't, you start to look for the next one. And then you do it again, and you want the next one and the next one. So then you start to lose the value of your music. I mean, obviously, you're giving you're lessening the value of your music yourself.
Yeah.
Looking for it to give you likes.
Yeah.
You know, investing in a way to pushing it into people's faces where it has no vitality.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we live in the day and age where like artists will get hyped over what they know to be fake followers and likes.
Yeah.
Just because they assume that the perception to people is something.
Yeah, they're getting crunk off bots.
Yeah.
They're
They're getting crunk off bots.
It's not even a real human.
It's absolutely flabbergasting, to be honest.
What do you mean? The bots listen to the music more than the humans do. The bots don't even have ears.
Absolutely. So many people don't know how inflated the numbers of the music industry are.
Oh my God, it's disgusting.
And
It's
like, listen,
disgusting.
might piss
It's
off
so
or rile
nasty.
a couple feathers,
Oh my God.
but I've seen the inside
Jesus
of so many
Christ.
of these operations that I've seen certain numbers of songs that are getting boosted where they'll have 500,000 streams for the first 3 days and then drop off to 20,000 streams on the fourth day, which I know you know what I'm talking about. You've seen it with your own eyes.
I've seen it. I can't believe it.
So
I can't believe it.
And this is
you could at least try to hide it.
And this is the top arc of the industry that's doing this time and time and time again.
Of course,
So
consistently.
The investors in the platforms like Spotify, they turn a blind eye to it because they have to keep their bottom line happy.
Right,
And
right,
if
right.
you don't have the A-listers on your platform debuting at number one, your platform's not going to look viable.
Of course not.
The fans are going to have some type of disconnect, but
Yeah.
it's the little guy that gets burned, because the minute that you try to play up to par with what the big dogs do, you get flagged, you get removed, you get penalized. Like, it's
also
it's a
for
delicate
the art,
state.
I mean, also at the art, at you know, if you're getting, if they're inflated, if your numbers are being inflated, like well over 70% of your own reach, there's something to say about your own artistic approach.
Yeah.
And or who you are as far as your talent wise. I mean, me personally, like I would rather have 100,000 real humans than freaking 1 million bots.
Absolutely.
You know, because
how are
those,
you going to sell tickets?
yeah, how are you going to sell tickets?
Yeah.
How are they going to show up?
Yeah.
You know what else? What happens when you stop running the bots?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got the humans there.
Yeah.
You got
And one word of
25,000.
advice to young artists is you have to understand the basis in how these social media platforms work. So
Yeah. They need you to make money.
you're the middleman
Yeah.
for these social media platforms, and you're the product on the shelf, right? You
Right.
are not the customer, is what
course
I always
not.
explain to these young artists. And how it works is the more that you can retain retention for the advertisers and keep people engaged with your content and on the platform, the
Right.
more the algorithm boosts you, because you're keeping people on the
Yes.
content and on the platform longer.
That's
which
right.
in return, the advertisers, who are the actual consumers of the platform, right, are the ones who are driving up the bottom line and the revenue for these social media apps. So they reward the people who are keeping people on the platform longer.
Has nothing to do with your music.
It has nothing to do with your music. It's all about it's all about keeping people scrolling, so that after they watch the cat video, the baby video, the food video, and then the funny
man,
video,
Mark trying to keep
they
his
get
Billy,
the
baby.
advertisement. Of course, and they're growing the revenue exponentially year over year, which shows you that it's working. So my advice to the younger artist is, don't get caught in the rabbit hole or the trap of boosting your posts.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Don't do it,
Don't
because
do it.
the minute you start boosting your posts, you're screwed.
You're screwed.
If you don't continue to throw money into the flames, basically, your content's not going to be exposed.
Yeah. Well, if you're buying engagement every day, none of your engagement is real.
No.
So you got to be careful with that as a whole.
No,
you know?
and Instagram moved away from the chronological order of showing people's content a long time ago.
Right.
So now it's random. Like a post that I make will find one of my followers weeks later if they've gone through enough of their timeline, and Instagram thinks that this will be intriguing enough for them, right?
Bro.
But when you post a piece of
crazy.
content like a post, a reel, or anything, only 17 to 22% of your audience is actually exposed to that piece of content. So if they engage with it and they do any part of the 4 forms of interaction, which is liking, sharing, commenting, saving, right? The 4 pillars of interaction. They each have different points for how it's algorithmically boosted, right? So if you want to support an independent artist, make sure you interact 4 ways. Save it, share it, comment, and like it, right? That's how you can help your favorite artist.
Yes.
You have to recognize that if your content is not being engaged with like that, Instagram doesn't give it the algorithmic boost.
Of course not.
So only a very small minority of
it.
your followers will even end up seeing it, right? Man. But even when you pay for it, right? When you go into the sub options of what you're boosting on your content, it'll say automatic audience detection to show it to people like your followers, not show it to people who are your followers. It's like-minded demographics or whatever it is of your followers. So
that sucks. Doesn't that pigeonhole you, though?
Of course it does, especially if you have botted followers.
Right.
So,
because what? Yeah, that's right.
Who is it showing?
What is it?
It only continues to scale it to botted outlets. You understand?
Chasing
so all
robot.
these artists pigeonhole themselves because they don't understand the science behind how these programs work. Like, and you have to recognize yourself as a consumer. Like, there's a time warp that happens to your brain when you start going through the scrolling aspect. Like you'll watch one video and before you know it, you've swiped through a couple hundred. Yeah. And you're there for hours on end.
Yeah.
And you turn around and from 8 p.m. it's become 10:30 p.m. and you're like, shit, I probably need to go to sleep. You know what I mean?
I've been rolling my thumbs for 2 hours.
Yeah. And what you thought was going to be a productive or leisure-based activity of you checking out and just like scrolling
became to be a distraction of your life for freaking 2 hours.
Yeah. And that's the basis in which everything evolves now. You're always looking for the next thing, the next
bro
hit.
That's sad. Have you seen bro, do you see what happens? Like I've seen the aftermath of it, and you've seen it too, man. It's actually depressing what it does to these kids. Because it's like dealing with a degenerate gambler,
man.
Being able to have imagine being able to have that casino as a 8-year-old or 16-year-old, 21-year-old in the palm of your hand, constantly getting that dopamine. And I've seen how it affects them, bro, when they don't have it, when they see that they're like, oh man, 1 million, 2 million, and then they go and they start working on themselves. They're like, oh my God, how come I only have 100,000? Like nobody likes me. Yeah. This is bullshit. I hate my life. Am I really that good?
And then it detracts the real talent from actually engaging in it.
It does, bro. It scares off.
Going back to another artist that you and I worked with for many years.
Yeah.
I always give praise to how he was one of the most supremely talented artists I've ever met. Yeah. No one goes into the studio and comes out with 100 songs the way that he did.
Right.
Captivating talent.
He was pumping them shits out.
Like with his eyes closed. You know what I mean? An absolute machine of what he did. The caliber in which he would pump out these records, I've never seen ever. And I've seen some of the greatest artists in the world in the studio. He was on a level of his own in that regard.
Amen.
He got so detracted from what the societal norm was that when he would put out a song and in the first couple weeks it would only do a couple 100,000 streams, quote unquote, only a couple 100,000 streams, he would be so demoralized and would be like, why am I even doing this? And what I would try to explain to him is like, listen to me, brother. Like
100,000 people is a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. There's 200,000 people that in a 2-week stretch.
Those are real humans. That's
if
not
I put you on the street in Los Angeles and asked you to go pass out flyers, even if you were with a super machine gun popping them out,
even if you were sitting on the highway,
you wouldn't be able to get that number out. So it's a interesting state of
it's
reflection.
Hard though. It's hard because it throws them off. It's hard.
Of course it does, but that's because of the state of acceptance in society. This is what we have allowed to occur, right? And in the midst of that, you have some of the greatest people having now underlying mental health issues without even recognizing it, because they become so depressed and so contingent upon the likes and the followers and this and that.
A person that they think that the people perceive they are, that image that they can't keep up.
When like you have to understand that the top level of the industry and the people that you look up to are cheating themselves.
Yeah.
They're pumping the numbers themselves.
Yeah, they're pumping the hell out them shits.
So like what's the basis of reality here? You know what I mean?
You know what? I got to tell you, if you're not performing, I can't say that you have really true fans.
Yeah.
If you're not packing a fucking anything, if you're not packing a anything or doing a anything, I can't really say these days that you have what is a true fan base, because your fan base online could be bought. Yeah. You know, and that sucks, because it's not an easy thing to be able to be in a position to like get on stage. This is not like an easy feat, you know. So there's a lot of artists that have a lot of great numbers, obviously not the numbers that are actually there. Yeah. And they still not able to get a show or able to do performances or things like that. So then it kind of begs the question, you know, how good are you really? Yeah. Are you really that good? Yeah. You know, or are you just pushing this narrative of who you are to this fake world online that you can buy an audience? Yeah. You can buy a fucking audience, man.
Yeah. And like there's different methods of engagement and interaction where, don't get me wrong, you can 100% command your audience online. But you really have to do it. But when we're in the day and age of where it's required of you to pump out 4 or 5 clips per day in order to algorithmically stay relevant, like who the fuck wants to do that, bro?
Nah.
Like you have to have a full-time content creation job. Listen. The advice that I give to the young artists there is, if you feel like you're in a bit of like a conundrum with how am I going to pump out this much content, shoot long form content. So dedicate 2 days of the week to shooting like an hour worth of clips. Bring a couple different shirts, find a view or a backdrop. People like the natural voyeuristic engagement. Bring 3 different shirts. Every 30 minutes, change your shirt. Every 20 minutes, change your shirt. Shoot what's essentially looks like 3 different bases of content twice a week, 2 hours, okay? Then take that hour-long content where you're just recording and performing your song or doing what you're doing over and over again, and chop it up into 30 to 45 second clips. And you now have yourself 60 pieces of content that you can now break down and post them everywhere.
That's smart.
There's platforms
so you can fill up 3 months.
Yeah,
if you do
and
that
now
shit.
all these apps in their APIs are implementing scheduling, so you could schedule the content ahead of time. Or you can use services like Hootsuite or relevant services like that you can research on your own to see what's affordable, and you could schedule the content across all different bases of platforms. So you can take one piece of content and you can upload it onto Facebook, onto YouTube Shorts, onto Instagram and TikTok, and now one piece of content has become 4. You understand?
Across 3 different.
When you take 10 pieces of content and you upload it into 4 different platforms, 100%, you now have 40 pieces of content that you've given yourself 40 different chances of catching an audience's attention and engagement.
Pay attention to that one.
So when you have a long form content that you then bust down into short form content, and you now took that hour long basis of content and you chopped it down into 30-second clips, you have 120 pieces of content.
Do you understand that this is my issue with artists?
Yeah.
This is my main issue with artists.
Yeah.
That they just don't do that.
Yeah.
This is not the day and age where we're going to take your song to a radio station or stuff like that.
No.
You have to be constantly engaging. And if you don't know how to engage, you need to ask the right people the right questions.
Yeah.
You need to research. I mean, bro, there's AI programs you can use.
That'll cut up the content for you.
Cut it up for you.
Yeah.
And make it look cool or whatnot.
CapCut is absolutely amazing. CapCut was one of the early pioneers in the space of like being able to upload directly to TikTok, the auto captions, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How they continue to innovate the platform, it is the best $9.99 you will spend a month. For young artists, get into these types of apps. How it cuts up the content for you. How even if you're off center in a frame, it'll automatically defocus you. All the different bases in which it'll cut up the content, because it has smart algorithmic programming. So like it knows the zoom cuts, it knows the jumps, it knows where to fade in and out. Like,
please
it's
do a
absolutely
class and
innovative.
tell these people what to do.
Yeah.
Like,
but that's definitely my advice to artists, though, is that dedicate 2 days a week. Okay.
Please
shoot
do.
an hour-long basis of content. Bring a couple different outfits. Switch up your outfits a couple times throughout that hour. Take that hour-long basis of clips, break it down into 30-second clips each. You now have 120 different clips. Then use scheduling programs like Hootsuite to schedule your content across the 4 major platforms of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. And you have now turned 100 pieces of content into 400. And that is how you give yourself overwhelming odds and a chance of actually connecting with the audience. Then when you figure out the underlying message and approach and the universal theme that you can apply, like, that's what drives POV-based content. It's just relatability. So when your song is put on the background of a clip of it says, send this to the person it reminds you of, how much easier of a prompt or a hook does it need to be? Literally send this to the person that you're thinking of. So that's how it gets the 100,000 plus share rate in the bottom right, because everybody has a person that they're going to think of when they hear it, right? Obviously. So when you find those hooks and those capture methods for attention for people, then you start putting it together for how you actually give yourself shots of actually being successful in this.
I need them to really do this. Nothing's more irritating than an artist showing up to me talking about that they don't want to do content. I'm like, first off, you're an artist.
Yeah.
Showing yourself is like the epitome of everything.
Yeah.
Like, you're the face of your music and who you are. And if you don't want to show that or do the work to show that, nothing else is going to matter, because we live in a day and age where that's how things work.
Yeah.
People want to be able to, the new demographic of people who consume music want to be able to connect with you and see you even prior to even listening to your music.
Yeah.
They'll go look at your page or whatnot, your socials, and see how long has this person been engaging? Like, how long has this person been being this artist or whatnot? And when you come to like a person, you come to working with a producer or whatnot, like me or anyone else, it's like, you can't, I'm not depending on my sound to make you the person who you think you are supposed to be. We don't live in that day and age anymore. You need to go show the world you are this person worthy of the sound that you're selling.
Yeah.
I spend more time telling young artists this, more so than anything, because it's the one major point that they don't get, that they need to have, that's really going to push them to the next level, bro. It drains me in the studio,
Unfortunately, social development is the new artist development in many ways.
Right. You're right.
Like, it really is, because that's just that's
social
the
development
manner in
is
which
the new artist
people
development. Come on.
engage or communicate these days, is through social media platforms. So your viability is going to come from how you utilize the platforms to your liking and your tailoring, right? Like, if you don't want to be the artist that pushes content for yourself, that's fine, but make sure that you have other outlets of how the content is going to be pushed for you. So whether you put your songs on different campaigns or behind other content pages, like the sound needs to be relevant and it needs to be trending, right?
Yes. And you just have to put something up there.
Yeah. Every song carries what's a popularity score, right? And another great app that I recommend to artists is an app called Song Stats, okay? Song Stats is an app that you could download that shows you the popularity score of your song. Anytime the song is posted on a reel, post anything, it'll link the post that was given to you, okay? And that was used for the sound. Like, if someone on Instagram or TikTok posts it, on your Song Stats profile, it'll pop up and it'll say, yo, this is where you can see this. It'll have a link to it so you can just directly go see the post, whatnot, whatever. So there's a popularity score that's assigned to every song, okay? the higher the popularity scores, the more of a correlation you see to the DSPs, Apple Music, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. So the more that the song gets used and shared and starts trending on the audio, the more that the algorithms of these DSPs pick it up and start putting it into different playlists, or they start exposing it more to different radio outlets.
Bro, you know so much about this shit, bro.
Of course, because there's been so many trials of failure. You understand?
I know. I've watched them.
To understanding how to actually do this the right way. Okay. And when you recognize the correlation between the two, between the song score, the popularity score, and then what becomes the algorithmic push on DSPs, you realize it's really quite simple. And people think that they need to come into this with tens of thousands of dollars. No. Never try and define what the hit from your catalog is going to be. Let the audience raise their hand. I
say it all the time. We don't make hits. The people make the hits.
The people make the hits.
People make the hits.
So test your records. Put your record out there with a few $100s of spend. And if it grossly outperforms what you expected it to do, and the return on investment from you understanding, okay, I put in $1,000 and I just got 50 million impressions, like, obviously I have something here. Then that's what you double down on and start reinvesting into and continue to push it, you know?
Yeah.
But